Okay, so we've been talking about the church and we've been talking about COVID. We've been talking about how it has impacted your congregation and worship. How has in terms of because one of the things that really came up was this idea of the church and state and how government is not to infringe upon our right to worship, to practice our religion, to our faith. And that was one of the main concerns that came down the line was, hey, we have governors telling us you absolutely can't, or you have governors suggesting that we shouldn't. Was that an issue for you? Did you come across that issue? Or how did you take that in? How did you take that in terms of your faith and now the government having some say into your worship?
I want to
Well,
live. I don't. I want to live, and if they're experts at it, I want to live. I want my congregants to live. Um, you know, the separation of church and state is not. It's not scriptural. It's American. Again, we have so many American ideologies and ideas. Obey the laws of the land. If they say not to do it, what's the big deal, right? What's the big deal? You're afraid you're not going to get your money. Look at Brother Stovall, Brother Ford. They've gotten more money. You're afraid. What are you afraid that Jesus is going to come back and you're not going to be in the church building and he's going to come back and then he's going to rapture you up and rapture those up who are in the church building. Like, oh, it's a faith issue. Come on, man. Like we just be doing too much, man. So for me, it's like obey the laws of the land, man. They know better than I know. I didn't think that they were trying to punk me or punk us. They were just saying, man, be careful. Like,
Yeah.
people are dying. So that was my take.
well,
Gotcha.
first of all, I believe that we have a poor, we comprehend what the Constitution says poorly. Just like Brother Rodney, I taught history for about 7 years, and it's. I'm trying to say this in a way that doesn't seem demeaning, but
Just speak,
what
brother. Just speak, my brother.
I,
Speak what's
all
on
right.
your heart.
So what I'm saying is that you know, in one breath we'll say they're infringing on our right. Well, the right hasn't been infringed upon. You know, Genesee Avenue has not missed worship since it started. Right now, well, what this is not a political issue. This is a safety issue, right? And then you have the same people that will turn around and say, "Oh, well, we don't want to deal with that because that's an issue of justice." Well, guess what? If it's an issue of justice, then it should be an issue that the church is at the forefront at, right? And so,
Mm-hmm.
what I mean by that is that when it comes to this idea of sin, right? Sin has names, right? Things like racism, things like xenophobia, things like misogyny. Those things have names. And those things aren't justice issues. Those things are sin issues that need to be dealt with from the foundation of the heart. Now, we look at keeping people safe. That's not a political issue. We've politicized it, because we have individuals who really don't care about people in positions of power.
Right.
And so when you have individuals in positions of power who don't care about people, they will politicize anything in effort to get the result that they want. And so then when they don't get the result that they want, what they do is they deflect, right? They find a means to shift the blame in effort so that people can argue amongst themselves, right? We got to realize that, man, being the church is more than 11 o'clock on a Sunday morning. Now, the church is an awesome place, and being the church is a great place, and we should invite people to worship, and we should study with folks. But guess what? We are known by what? Our fruit. We should be
Yes, sir.
feeding people. We should be helping folks. Man, listen, we want to talk about the separation of church and state. I'm walking up the steps to the church building to hand out communion and to hand and to open the doors. If people need supplies, if they need food, we have a pantry. Check this out. Lady stops by the building. She says, "Excuse me, are you guys having a meeting or an NA meeting?" I said, "Well, no, ma'am, we're not. Because of the pandemic." She said, "I've been all over town. I just need a meeting.
Mm.
I'm about to relapse." Wait a minute. We've politicized this issue to a place in which the people who really need the help can't get it
Mm.
because we've politicized it,
Wow.
right? We put our westernized ideology on something that was never supposed to be partisan in the first place.
Facts.
The historical reference behind the Constitution, they were worried about religious persecution because that's what they fled from.
Facts.
So they wanted to keep that in line. So when Thomas Jefferson and all them cats got over to them colonies in Virginia, they said, well, man, we don't want the Anglican Church coming in and telling us what to do. We don't want the Catholic Church coming in and telling us what to do. You know, I mean, we don't want the government telling us what to do. We don't want the government telling us how to worship or when to worship and things like that. But man, for the most part, man, people haven't been restricted. People have just been made uncomfortable, and people don't like to be made uncomfortable.
Come on.
And so when we get to a place where we are okay with considering one another, man, we'll see that the church will be what it's supposed to be. But as long as we're arguing over things that, you know, like my grandma would say, don't amount to a hill of beans, right? We're gonna find ourselves in a place of frustration and arguing and going back and forth. And so we got to be careful that we don't politicize things that were never intended to be politicized in the first place.
Facts.
Yeah, I think you guys said a key thing, and it just goes back to contextually understanding the scriptures. Because if you didn't have a problem with the virtual meeting or other means of meeting and worshiping, and you weren't so fixated on the building, no one would ever have said that the church and state, there was some issue there, because no one has ever said y'all can't worship. That has never been said. No one has ever said we couldn't worship. They've said don't go to the building. And so I would have thought, it was just really sad to hear some of the responses, because we always preach that church is not the building. We preach it all the time. You hear it all the time. That's part of the rhetoric. Church ain't the building. Church ain't the building. And here was our time to really understand. And it just showed you that we just be mouthing off words. We just know all the cliches. We know our script. But we had a problem with not going to the building. Well, church ain't the building. And so when they said don't go to the building, we should have already been like, okay, well, how else we going to meet? And it should have been a no-brainer. And I think now people have you just looked at the news. I mean, as soon as it happened, you had some people that were defiant. That one guy, I can't remember exactly where they were. He went back, told all his congregants, hundreds of people were getting infected. And then that dude died, because he was defiant, telling people they didn't have faith. Brother, you don't understand faith, because just coming to this place, really, you wanted people to have faith in you, keep listening to you, instead of knowing what the word was actually saying. Because like Alvin said earlier, man, and it's just so big. And it might seem elementary, but it's really huge. Do you understand who you worship? Right? Who is it? If I understand that, and I know the power of God and I know his presence, man, I go in my closet right now and worship right now. Like, it does not matter. We can start up a worship right here on this chat. Like, it doesn't matter where you are. He is not bound to this thing. This is just a luxury item of the 21st century.
Yes.
That's all it is. A couple of hundred years from now, if the earth is still here, it'll be something else. Maybe we'll be rolling around in spaceships. Who knows, right? But the word will still be the same, that we have to worship the maker in spirit and in truth, and not get lost, like Vince said, and all this little stuff that's just hindering us.
Listen, my brothers, you guys have been awesome, man. I am learning, okay? Y'all teaching me.